For several months, she treated his driveway like it was her personal parking spot until he had her car towed. Twice. What followed was a public unraveling so dramatic, the whole neighborhood took notice. Reginald Reggie Carter was a man of calm temperament. He had to be. His days were spent wrangling a classroom full of middle school students in Lakeland, Florida, trying to make science interesting for kids more invested in their smartphones than in atoms and molecules. He had a routine, a steady rhythm to life, and he liked it that way. His home was his retreat, a simple but tidy one-story brick house with a neatly maintained lawn and a narrow driveway that could fit his car and occasionally a guest. It wasn't extravagant, but it was his haven, a place to relax, grade assignments, and watch the game in peace. Until Blythe Vanderholt decided his driveway was hers to use. It began subtly. The first time Reggie noticed her silver Lexus RX in his driveway, he figured it was just an honest mistake. Maybe she had company and needed to shift vehicles around. No big deal. He let it slide. But then it kept happening. Each time, Blythe had an excuse. She was only running inside for a moment or dropping off something quickly. She'd offer a tight smile, a casual wave of her manicured fingers, as if that made it all okay. Reggie didn't like it, but he wasn't the type to stir up drama over a minor inconvenience. That changed the day he came home from work, worn out and starving, only to see her Lexus once again blocking his driveway. This time, no one was around. Reggie inhaled deeply, then marched to Blythe's front door and knocked. She opened it with a look that said she already knew why he was there. "Reggie, what's the matter?" she asked, acting surprised, her voice dripping with fake politeness. He gestured toward the driveway. "Your car's in my spot again." Blythe blinked as if the idea had never occurred to her. "Oh, I just had a delivery, and the driver needed space to back out," she said, smiling like that settled everything. "You don't mind, do you?" "I do, actually," Reggie replied, keeping his voice steady. "Please stop parking in my driveway." She sighed like she was being asked to do something unreasonable. "Reggie, I live right next door. It's not like I'm parking on a stranger's land." "You are parking on mine," he said firmly. She scoffed and rolled her eyes. "Are you really making a fuss about a car being there for a few minutes?" "It's not just a few minutes, it keeps happening," Reggie said, arms folded. "And I need it to end." She laughed dryly. Okay, don't get so worked up. I'll move it." And she did, once. But it didn't stop. Over the next several weeks, the pattern continued. Reggie would come home and find her vehicle exactly where it didn't belong. If he left a note, it vanished. If he knocked, she conveniently wasn't home. One night, Reggie came home to find not only her Lexus, but also a sleek black BMW in his driveway, and another car that clearly wasn't his. That was the last straw. He parked on the street, pulled out his phone, and took a photo. Then he headed over to Blythe's door and knocked, louder this time. She opened the door slowly, showing no urgency, wearing an annoyed expression. "Reggie," she drawled like he was disturbing her evening. "Whose car is that?" he asked, pointing. "Oh, that's my friend," she said airily. "We were having a little get-together. You weren't home, so I didn't think it mattered." "It does matter," Reggie said, voice tighter. "This isn't a public lot. It's my driveway." She folded her arms and tilted her head, acting like he was the problem. "You could have said something earlier. I would have moved it." "I'm saying it now. Move the car." Blythe rolled her eyes, but went back inside to make a call. Reggie waited 10, 15, nearly 20 minutes. He'd had enough. He returned to his home, sat on his couch, and looked up the number for the local towing service. This was just getting started. Reggie wasn't the kind of guy who liked conflict. He kept to himself, stayed out of drama, and gave others the benefit of the doubt. But Blythe had crossed the line. The next morning, before heading to work, Reggie contacted the Homeowners Association. He didn't expect much. HOAs often favored the most influential residents, and Blythe practically ran the board. Still, it was worth trying. The response? Exactly as expected. "Unless there's actual damage to your property, we don't usually step into neighbor disagreements," the board woman on the phone said. "Have you tried talking to her?" "I've done nothing but talk to her," Reggie replied, exasperated. "We can send a courtesy email," she offered. "That's about all we can do." "Yeah, that'd really teach her." Reggie didn't argue. He thanked her, and hung up. If they wouldn't handle it, he would. That morning, he left one final note on Blythe's windshield, bold and unmistakable. Do not park here again. But when he came home that evening, the note was gone. And there was her Lexus, once again parked crookedly in his driveway, as if daring him to do something. Reggie parked on the street again and stared in disbelief. She wasn't even pretending to be respectful anymore. He stormed to her door and knocked hard. A full minute passed before she answered, wine glass in hand, clearly unwinding from her day. "Reggie," she said, dragging his name out again. "I need you to move your car." She took a slow sip. "Oh, I meant to text you. I figured you wouldn't mind since you always park on the street." Reggie's hands flexed at his sides. He spoke evenly. "I do mind. This is my property." She chuckled, shaking her head. "Reggie, you're seriously losing it over a driveway?" He stepped closer. "No, I'm frustrated because I've asked you repeatedly to stop, and you just keep ignoring me." She swirled her wine, rolled her eyes. "Fine. I'll move it." Reggie turned to leave, but then heard her mutter something. Not clear enough to catch all the words, but the tone? It was unmistakable. He turned back. "What did you just say?" She gave him an innocent look. "Nothing." "No, you said something." Blythe smirked. "I just don't understand why some people get so uptight over little things." There it was. That smug, dismissive arrogance. The entitlement. Reggie didn't argue. He walked back inside, pulled out his phone, and saved the towing company's number. That night, while grading papers, his mind kept circling back to the exchange. Her attitude. Her nerve. She wasn't going to stop. And Reggie was done playing nice. So the next time Blythe parked in his driveway, Reggie didn't knock. He didn't leave a note. He didn't say a word. He called the tow truck. It was a Friday evening. After a long week at school, he was running on fumes, but the sight of her Lexus in his driveway, that fired him up. This time there was no hesitation. He parked his car down the street and let the professionals handle the rest. Reggie dialed up the towing service and gave him a clear order. "I need this vehicle gone." The truck pulled up in under 20 minutes, almost poetic in its timing. The driver stepped out, glanced at the scene, and gave a simple nod. "She's parked in your spot?" "Yep," Reggie replied. "Got proof this is your property?" Reggie handed over his deed. He had come ready. "All right," the driver said, "let's hook her up." Within moments, Blythe's fancy SUV was being lifted, its wheels locked tight. Reggie stood with his arms folded, watching with quiet satisfaction as the tow truck drove off, her Lexus vanishing down the block. He wasn't sure what kind of blowback to expect. Would she come storming over, threaten legal action, play dumb? He didn't have to wonder for long. An hour later, just as Reggie was winding down for the night, bang, bang, bang. His front door shook from Blythe's fist. Reggie didn't jump up. He moved slowly, stretched a little, then casually opened the door. There she stood, flip-flops, silk pajama bottoms, and pure rage. Her phone clenched in one hand, her perfectly styled blonde bob slightly out of place. "Where's my car?" she snapped. Reggie cocked his head. "Oh, the one that was parked illegally in my driveway?" She narrowed her eyes. "Don't mess with me, Reggie." "Where?" On this." "My car?" He gave a lazy shrug. "Towed." Her jaw dropped. "You what?" "You heard me. You heard me. You wouldn't stop, so I had it towed." "Problem solved." Blythe laughed, a high-pitched, almost manic laugh. "You'll regret this. Do you even know who I am?" "I'm on the HOA board. I have influence, Reggie." Reggie just blinked slowly. "Good for you. Your car's over at Sunshine Towing on Orange Blossom Trail. Have a great night." Then he closed the door. But she wasn't finished. She stayed outside another 10 minutes, ranting, yelling, threatening. She even tried calling the police. But when the officers showed up, they didn't give her much attention. "You had her vehicle removed from your own property?" one asked Reggie. "Sure did," he said, handing over his deed. The cop glanced at it and turned to Blythe. "Ma'am, he's within his rights." If you want your car back, you'll have to pay the towing fee. Reggie wished he could have framed the shade of red that washed over her face. But he had a feeling this wasn't over. And he was right. Reggie figured towing the car would end it. But Blythe wasn't backing down. In fact, she turned it up. First, she slipped a passive-aggressive note on his door in bright red ink. This is a shared community. We should be respectful to each other. Reggie tossed it straight into the bin. Then came the HOA complaints. A letter arrived. His porch plants were in violation of community guidelines. Reggie laughed out loud. Those ferns had been there for 2 years without issue. Then another, his trash bins were left out too long. Another still, mailbox paint fading. By the 4th letter, he wasn't angry anymore. He was almost impressed by her persistence. But then came the security calls. One evening, while watering his grass, a white SUV pulled up, lights on. A stocky, middle-aged security officer stepped out, clearly trying to look official. "Do you live here, sir?" he asked. Reggie frowned. "Yes." "We received a report of suspicious activity." Reggie sighed. "Suspicious?" "Of course." He turned, and there she was, Blythe, arms folded on her porch, pretending to mind her own business. "Suspicious? For watering my lawn?" Reggie asked flatly. The officer looked embarrassed. "Look, sir, save it," Reggie cut him off. "Tell her to get a new hobby." The officer walked back to his car. Blythe just smiled like she'd won something. Reggie was done. He walked right up to her porch. "Blythe." She blinked, playing innocent. "Everything okay, Reggie?" "I saw security. Hope nothing serious." He folded his arms. "You know why they came." "Reggie, no need to be hostile. We all have to look out for the neighborhood, right?" He stared at her, calm. She wanted a reaction to make him snap, but instead he smiled. "I'm done being polite, Blythe," he said, voice steady. "I gave you more chances than anyone would have. You kept pushing. Now let's see what happens when I push back." For the first time, she didn't have a snarky comeback, and that was telling. 1 week later, on a sunny Saturday, Reggie returned from the gym to find her Lexus parked right in the middle of his driveway, again. Worse, it was blocking his garage. Bold. And today his family was coming over for a cookout. Reggie stared at the car for a moment, then stepped out of his car and made a call. "Hey, it's Reggie Carter. Need a tow. Same spot as last time." The dispatcher chuckled. "Same car too?" "You got it. We'll be there in 15. Reggie smiled, pulled some lawn chairs out of his trunk, and sat on the porch, waiting. The tow truck showed up fast. The driver hopped out and nodded. "We doing this again?" "Looks like it," Reggie said, gesturing. The driver smirked. Some folks never learn. No hesitation. He began hooking the Lexus up again. That's when Blythe came storming out. "Stop! What do you think you're doing?" Reggie leaned back in his chair, sipping water like he had all day. The tow guy kept working. Wheels strapped. Blythe marched up to Reggie, furious. "You called the tow again?" He raised an eyebrow. "You parked in my spot again." "I have guests. No street parking." Reggie tilted his head. "Not my issue." "You're being ridiculous," she shouted. "I said I'd move it." He stayed relaxed. "You said that before, and yet here we are." Her face turned beet red. "You don't know what you're doing," she growled. "I have connections. I can make your life hard." Reggie laughed, genuinely. "Oh, Blythe," he said, shaking his head, "I don't think you realize what's happening here." He pointed toward the tow truck. "Your car? It's already gone." She spun around, and sure enough, the Lexus was halfway down the block. She let out a shrill scream. "You'll regret this," she shouted. Reggie stood up slowly, brushing dust from his jeans. "No, Blythe, you will." She stood there fuming as Reggie walked calmly inside, right as his family began arriving, full of laughter, hugs, and joy. Blythe remained on her porch, alone, but she wasn't finished, and Reggie could feel it. Towing her car a second time should have ended the drama, But Blythe wasn't one to accept defeat. She was determined to retaliate, and this time she wanted an audience. By Monday morning, Reggie had been cast as the villain, or at least that's how Blythe tried to paint it. A community-wide email from the HOA circulated, penned by her allies, vaguely referencing recent escalations between neighbors, worded just carefully enough to make Reggie look like the instigator. Then came the flyers. Yes, laminated flyers taped to mailboxes up and down the block. Is this the kind of community we want? Do we tow our neighbors instead of speaking to them? Reggie tore the one off his own mailbox and shook his head in disbelief. All this over a driveway? But the most satisfying part? No one was buying it. Blythe had burned too many bridges. By the next morning, Reggie's phone buzzed with messages. Neighbors, PTA parents, even some HOA board members not in her pocket. Dude, saw the flyer. She's unhinged. She fined me $200 last year for a garden gnome. If she parks in your driveway again, I'll chip in for the tow. Reggie laughed out loud. He didn't even need to defend himself anymore. People had witnessed her behavior for years. The petty fines, the power trips, the absurd complaints. Now, she was airing her own dirty laundry, and the neighborhood was done pretending. Then came the HOA meeting. Reggie usually avoided them, but this time he sat front and center, right across from Blythe. She wouldn't even look at him. The meeting droned on budget talk, landscaping, reminders about garbage bins. Then a board member cleared his throat. We need to address a recent complaint involving misuse of private property. Blythe sat upright, preparing to play the victim. The complaint is against Blythe Vanderholt. Reggie grinned. Blythe's head snapped toward speaker. Excuse me? A woman on the board, clearly exhausted, added, We've received multiple reports of harassment, misusing HOA authority, and retaliating against neighbors. Blythe was stunned. I'm the one being harassed, she barked. But the board member continued reading. Unauthorized use of security calls, inappropriate HOA communication, and now stealing personal property. Blythe's voice faltered. You're taking his side? The woman responded flatly. We're taking the community side. Blythe opened her mouth again, but there was no support. Not from the board. Not from the room. She had lost control. But Reggie wasn't finished. Blythe had ruled the neighborhood like a tyrant for years, and now that power was slipping. Then she made her final mistake. 2 days after the meeting, Reggie pulled into his driveway and noticed something strange. His trash bins were missing. Not knocked over, just gone. Then he spotted them, stacked neatly behind Blythe's fence. He actually laughed. Flyers, complaints, fake security calls, and now she was stealing trash cans? He snapped a few clear photos, walked up to her door and knocked. Long pause, and the door creaked open. Blythe looked tired. No smirk, no attitude, just defeated. Reggie raised his phone. Want to explain why my trash cans are behind your house? She folded her arms. I don't know what you're talking about. He chuckled. I have the photos. Don't make this worse. She said nothing. You've lost, he said calmly. You can't find me. Security won't listen. The HOA's done with you. And now you're stealing trash cans. Her eyes darkened, but she stayed silent. He stepped forward slightly, voice calm and even. You spent months trying to make me miserable. But now he motioned toward her dark, silent house. You're the one living in misery. She said nothing, just closed the door. Reggie smiled. Honestly, shutting the door was the wisest thing she'd done in months. But he still had one move left. The next morning, Reggie filed a formal complaint with documentation. Multiple neighbors had given statements. He had proof of false security calls, unauthorized HOA communication, and now property theft. By the end of the week, the HOA board had no choice. Blythe Vanderbilt was officially removed from the HOA. Her reign was over, and the best part, she never parked in his driveway again. She never spoke to Reggie. Not a single word. No smug looks, no sarcastic comments. Not even a note. She avoided him entirely. And Reggie? He could finally come home without a car blocking his garage, without ridiculous letters, and without a war at his front door. Just peace. But the neighborhood? They didn't stop talking. Blythe's downfall had become a local legend. People came forward with their stories. She fined me for my kid's chalk drawing on the sidewalk. She called security on my team because he had headphones on. She once tried to ban Christmas lights. And Reggie realized she had always been the problem. He just happened to be the first person who stood up. And when he did, the entire community followed. A few months later, a for sale sign went up in her yard. Some said she was too humiliated to stay. Others believed she had simply made too many enemies. Reggie didn't care why. As the moving trucks pulled away, he stood on his porch, took a deep breath, and smiled. The war was over, and he had won. The lesson? Some people think they can bully others forever, use power to push people around without consequences. But eventually they pick the wrong person. And when that person fights back, the world watches them fall.